Hello, my name is Kalia Loper, and I'm making this video today to share with you all my story about how it is that I survived having an occluded superior vena cava. And one of the main reasons I'm doing this story is because it's not just that I survived, it's how my superior vena cava came to be occluded in the first place that I would like to bring awareness to. So here goes. I'm going to share my story. I'm not a professional video maker. I decided at the last minute to just sit down and make this video without anything fancy going on or, creative, even though I can be a pretty creative person, but I thought it would be best if I just sat here and shared my story. So this is a last minute decision. All right, here goes. Back in January of 2021, I was in my home. I was doing some laundry, folding it on my bed, and I got this really funny sensation, like right here in my neck, almost like a strain. And I found that I was like breathing kind of heavy, like, trying to get air in. It almost felt like I was having a little bit of trouble. And after that happened for like a couple seconds. And after that happened, I got really dizzy, really lightheaded. And I was like, oh, wow, that was weird. What was that, Continued on doing what I was doing, folding my clothes. About maybe an hour or two later, I was doing something in my kitchen. And I remember I was kind of bending down, maybe getting like a pot or something out. And I stood up and I got that little feeling again. And the thing happened again. And I was like, okay, maybe this is something that I should get checked out. So what I did is I went and reached out to a nurse line. Just a little bit of back history. I don't like using the word complicated. They say complicated medical history. I don't really like saying that. I would say rich. It's a lot. I would say I have a rich medical history. But one of the main things that I have dealt with is Crohn's disease. I am a person who has Crohn's disease. My Crohn's disease was inactive at the time. It was in remission. But because of me having Crohn's disease so severely, I, had a lot of primary care doctor and GI doctor all together at the same facility to care for me. And it's a really good facility. It has a good reputation. So anyway, back to my story. I call my nurse line and I'm kind of like, hey, there's this thing going on, like, within my neck. It's making me lightheaded, etc. So, they asked me a few questions and they're like, okay, we want you to go to the emergency room. I'm like, all right. So I go to the emergency room. They do all kind of tests. They check they ended up giving me like a CT scan of my chest and my neck. It was known in my medical history that I had Hashimoto's, thyroiditis, which is, from what I understand, a thyroid condition that's autoimmune. And I have a goiter. I don't have it anymore. I had a goiter. So they're thinking something's going on with the goiter. That's why they gave me the CT scan. And they're like, actually, we don't see that it's gotten any larger or anything like that. So, we don't think it's the goiter, but we're, just to be on the safe side, we're going to get you over, to talk to the thyroid surgeon because maybe the goiter needs to come out. I agreed with this and went on about things, setting that all up. Well, Over the course of that year, 2021, I noticed that this sensation thing that was happening with me was happening more often. So it wasn't something that occurred every day, but it was something that was bothering me enough because as I'm moving around my home or I was going for an evening walk with my husband or doing something like that, I would get like lightheaded. I started to feel like, something's not right here, feeling like, I could pass out, etc. So when I went to see my primary care doctor for, my checkup that year, I mentioned it. I said, hey, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's my thyroid, goiter, but this thing that happens, I kept saying it's happening in my neck because what would happen is this would like bulge out right here. And when it was happening, I would feel like I needed to take deep breaths and I felt lightheaded. And so my primary care doctor was like, yeah, I think it's, your goiter. But, of course, if you, ever feel anything serious, more serious is going on, make sure that you get in to the ER. I was like, okay. Sidebar, also what happened that year is I went to my primary care provider and asked my primary care provider if I could have my power port removed. I had a power port because of my Crohn's disease and because my veins are really hard to stick. In other words, they tell me they're small veins and they're hard to find and all of that good stuff. So I had a power port in my body, and I just had this deep gut feeling that it needed to come out. It had been in for 7 years. And I was like, can I get this out? This was during COVID time. So my primary care doctor was like, I don't think that's a good idea. If you get COVID, you're in the hospital. We need to be able to access you. If we take it out, that could be a problem. It could be between life and death. Her recommendation was for me to see the interventional radiologists, who were the power port doctors at the facility I'm going to. And for them to check my power port to make sure that it's working well. And if it is working well, she said we should just leave it alone. I agreed to this plan. I said, okay, I'll do that. I did, went through the procedure of checking my power port. The interventional radiologist said your power port works just fine. If you want to have it taken out, we'll take it out. If you want to leave it in, we'll leave it in. If you want to have it replaced, we can also replace it. I went back to my primary care provider with that information, and the decision was made that as long as it was working, I didn't want to undergo another surgery to have another one replaced. So I kept it. All right. So anyway, that's kind of like a back history. Back to my symptoms. I'm in my house one day, about to go and get in the shower, and I woke up to my granddaughter. I opened my eyes to me being on the floor, and my then maybe 1.5, 2-year-old granddaughter standing there as I was lying on the floor. I had passed out, blacked out, lost consciousness. So my husband took me to the emergency room. When I got to the emergency room, I was tested. They did a full workup, EKG, all of the things. They tested everything, and they were like, we don't see anything wrong. Your heart is fine. Everything looks good. They gave me a chest CT. They did all the things that they do in the ER, and they discharged me. They were like, we don't know what happened, but you're okay. Not too long after that, something similar happened. I didn't lose consciousness, but I got very dizzy, very lightheaded. And every time this happened, that little nagging thing in my neck happened as well. So, happened again. I'm like, okay. My husband takes me to the emergency room, and they're pretty much like, yeah, we don't know what you're talking about. You're good. We're doing the testing. You look really good. You don't have a fever. You don't have a virus. You're good. I'm like, okay. But this time, I was insistent. I was like, listen, something's going on with my body. This thing keeps happening. I kept calling it a squeezing. This squeezing of my neck, it keeps happening. And like, it's getting worse. It's not getting better. And I'm coming to y'all and I've told my primary care doctor, and you're telling me that I'm okay, but I don't feel okay because this never happened to me before. So the emergency room doctor came in my room and she said, look, I'm looking at your oxygen level looks great. Your blood pressure looks great. Your heart rate is great. We've been monitoring your heart. And I said to her, when I'm sitting still, this doesn't happen. It's when I'm moving. So she asked the nurse to get a portable pulse ox and to just walk me around the emergency department and monitor me and see how things go. Well, when I got out of the bed and I started to walk, I got a couple steps outside of the room before the nurse was like, I need you to get back to the bed. My heart rate had gone up to about 140 something. My oxygen rate dropped really, really low, and the thing was happening. So, based on that evaluation in the ER, the doctor said, we're going to admit you, and we're going to ask the cardiologist to come and see you. I'm like, okay, cool. They're like, it might be something going on that we didn't pick up in the ER, but they may be able to pick it up, upstairs. I'm like, okay. I was admitted to the hospital, and this is where it gets hairy. So I saw the pulmonologist, I saw the ENT, I saw the cardiologist, and I saw the thyroid doctor, and I also saw my GIs, my gastroenterologist. Oh, and the neurology team. 6 different specialists. Every one of them stated that whatever the problem was, it had nothing to do with them. So the cardiologist said, this is a problem with your lungs. The lung doctors, the pulmonologist said, nope, this is because of your goiter. The ENT was pretty much like, oh no, it's not that. The goiter hasn't gotten any bigger. It's still doing what it's been doing. I think this is something going on in your brain, because they did some bubble tests and some bubbles came back when they did the ultrasound of my heart. This is a brain issue. The neurologist was like, this has nothing to do with your brain. And on and on and on we went. I left the hospital without an answer, no clear answer as to what had happened to me. I had a bunch of follow-up appointments. I had tests. I had stress tests scheduled. They did a tilt table test. They did, the pulmonologist pretty much had me follow up to tell me, we're so sorry, but there is absolutely nothing wrong with your lungs. They're in great shape. And so anyhow, I followed up. I did all of those tests, more CT scans of my neck, more CT scans of my lungs. And my ENT was pretty much like, your goiter does need to come out because it does have a mass effect. So it was so big, it was pressing on my airway, narrowing it a little bit, but nothing to the point that I was like gonna, die, in my sleep or something. He was like, but it does need to come out. It's pretty big, but it's your thyroid. So, you're going to have to be on thyroid medication and et cetera. And I was like, okay. So what they finally did after a second hospital stay, because I forgot that part. Yeah. After I was taken out, given all those tests, I had another experience. Sunday, I'm cooking for my family and my heart is racing. It's like pop, 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 feeling like it's going to pop out of my chest, to the extent that like even when I'm resting, it's like pop, 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 popping. And my husband was like, okay, he took me to the ER again. And this time they told me that I had a blood clot in my inferior vena cava, I do believe. So they gave me the heparin drip, They admitted me to the hospital, did all the things. I was a little skeptical because of the first admission to the hospital. They couldn't find what was going on with me. And I didn't know if this was connected, but it felt connected because the neck thing was happening. My heart was pounding. So I have a younger sister. She's a nurse. I have two nurse younger sisters. But this one, I texted her and I said, okay, this is what they're telling me. I have a blood clot in my inferior vena cava. Is this something that, I should go home? Am I good to go home? She's like, no, stay there. Let them treat you. So I listened. I did that. And I'm happy I did. That was resolved. But as I was in the hospital, my nurses were noting that every time I got up to go to the bathroom, this thing would happen where my oxygen level would drop into like the high 80s or the low 90s. And my heart rate would increase really, really high. They noted it. They explained it to the doctor. But I was there for a blood clot. I wasn't there for that. So they sent me on my way. All right. I would go to my regular doctor's appointments. And every time I would see my primary care doctor, I would say, this is still there and it's getting worse. Now, what they did after the battery of tests they ran is they diagnosed me with something called POTS. They were basically saying, okay, you have something called POTS. It's something that happens when there's like a miscommunication or misfiring between your brain, your autonomic nervous system, autonomic, whatever the word is, I'm sorry, nervous system. And they were pretty much like, so it's important for you to, get exercise, eat salt. This is going to happen when you bend over, things of that nature. You'll get dizzy. You have something called POTS. I was like, oh, okay. I was following all their instructions and I wasn't getting better. So some other things that I noticed. I noticed that I was gaining weight. Now, that's normal, but I'm not a big eater. I don't exercise like I'm supposed to because every time I did try to exercise, I felt like I was going to die. But I love going for walks. And so I would go for walks with my husband. We do like, walks in the evening and things of that nature when we could. Hot here where I live. And anyway, I would wake up in the morning and my face would be like super, super swollen, like my eyes barely open, puffy face. And because of the goiter, I thought I couldn't lie down and sleep. So I literally had to sleep kind of like sitting up, almost like, just slightly reclined. I noticed that if I lie flat, I felt like I was going to suffocate. I also noticed that anytime I was in the bathtub or the shower, when I turned the water off and I got out, the neck thing would happen to me. I call it the neck thing. I felt it mostly on this side of my body, but then it got to the point where both sides would bulge. I also realized that like my upper arms, all of this, I was like real big, real puffy. And so that was another thing that I noticed with this. And as time went on, it got to the point that anytime I needed to bend down to do something, I knew that this thing was going to happen to me. So I kept saying to my primary care doctor, this POTS is really kicking my butt. Is there anything I can do about it? Because it's not getting better. It's getting worse. It's interfering with my life to the point that I'm not able to exercise. I had to stop going on my walks because it was a lot of pausing. Anytime I would exert myself, the thing would happen. I showed her pictures of my face in the morning. I said, this is what I look like in the morning. I'm very swollen. I don't even recognize myself. My neck was extremely enlarged. I looked pretty bad. It was interfering with my voice. I sing. I was having trouble singing. I was having trouble dancing. These are things that I did on a regular basis. I was having trouble doing those things. So, primary care doctor's like, oh yeah, really sucks, I'm so sorry. Get the goiter out, you might feel better. I'm like, word, I'm doing it. So I go to the ENT surgeon and I'm like, I'm ready. I want the goiter out. And he's like, okay, let's do it. I'm going to schedule an appointment for you to first get your CT scan of your neck and your chest because I need to see if there's been any changes. And then after that, I want you to come see me and we'll discuss a plan of when we can take it out. And I was like, okay, let's do it. So I go in the morning, get the CT scan, go to his office. And so I open up my portal because I say, I want to make sure that whatever is going on, that I ask all the questions that I need to ask because I want this to be resolved. I look at my results of my CT scan and of my neck and my chest, and I saw where it said occluded superior vena cava with a network or something like that of zygous veins. And I was like, I don't know what that means. That was a finding. Looked at my previous CAT scans. It was on there. And my previous CAT scan too. Looked at the one before that. It was on there. And I was like, oh, what is this? No one ever told me about this. My primary care doctor never mentioned this. So when I went in to see the surgeon, I said, so he's like, yeah, we're going to take it out. Nothing's changed. It's still the same. But because it has a mass effect, it's pressure on your trachea, we should get it out of there. And I said, well, what is this superior vena cava occlusion thing? Does that have something to do with my thyroid? And he says, let me look. And he looked and he says to me, that has nothing to do with the thyroid. But your primary care doctor needs to know about this. This is pretty serious. I'm not a heart surgeon. I'm not a heart doctor. But I think you need to see them. But you should talk to your primary care doctor because this isn't what I do. And I was like, okay. So what happens next is, going to be video too because this feels like it's been a little long. It's been 20 minutes. So I'll make another video and speak about what happened next.